Netflix, the standard way to make an action movie that we learned was, you usually have like three set pieces, one in the first act, one in the second, and one in the third, and they kind of ramp up, and the big one with all the explosions, and you spend most of your money on that one in the third act. That's your kind of finale. And now they're like, can we get a big one in the first 5 minutes to get somebody? We want people to stay
Yeah.
tuned in, and it wouldn't be terrible if you reiterated the plot 3 or 4 times in the dialogue because people are on their phones while they're watching. You know what I mean?
Oh, no.
And so then it's going to really start to infringe on
Creatively.
how we're telling the
but
story.
then you look at our lesson.
That was Matt Damon on the Joe Rogan Experience in January. Damon was in the studio with his lifelong friend Ben Affleck to promote their new movie, The Rip, a Netflix action thriller in which a sting operation goes awry because of a few dirty cops. The duo was describing a seismic creative shift in cinema since streaming took over, one that defies a time-tested golden rule: show, don't tell. Reiterating the plot 3 to 4 times, as the Netflix executives advise, would break the rule again and again, perhaps calling for a new one to be instated. Tell, show, then tell again. Damon ended his comments with a laugh, but there was more than a hint of disappointment that this is the new direction of filmmaking. It was also a bit ironic coming from him if you've watched The Rip, since it epitomizes the new rules he described. Big set piece in the first few minutes, explain the plot as much as possible. In The Rip, the latter is largely achieved via exposition and a play-by-play of the plot via characters' text messages. It defeats the purpose of the movie since finding the identity of the dirty cop is supposed to be part of the fun. The action sequences are thrilling enough to keep you hooked, yet the plot regurgitation felt insulting at times. Here I am, ready to give Damon and Affleck 2 hours of my time, but they're also daring me to have my phone in one hand, scrolling through Instagram. Actions are announced, motivations are spelled out, and subtext is converted into text. The motivations for verbal diarrhea via exposition are clear. Close to 90% of Americans admit to multitasking while watching TV. They could be eating, texting, or scrolling on their smartphones. Lo and behold, we've realized that the home is not the ideal environment for watching a movie. A second report from January of this year forecasts that nearly 66% of US social media users will be watching TV while using their smartphones. The primary experience is no longer the movie, so the script needs to adapt, reduce the burden on the viewer's mind by prioritizing oral communication over visual. We can't watch the TV screen and scroll TikTok at the same time, but we sure as hell can listen to what's on TV while scrolling. Problem solved? However, people who take their craft seriously would disagree. Dune director Denis Villeneuve has been a vocal critic of the dialogue-heavy format, stating movies have been corrupted by television, arguing that the industry has forgotten the power of pure image and sound. Ridley Scott bluntly characterized modern Hollywood as drowning in mediocrity, noting that the mid-budget thrillers he excelled in have been hollowed out. Martin Scorsese penned an essay arguing that the term content itself is harmful to the art form, pointing out that algorithms treat a Kubrick film and a cat video as equal data points. And Wonder Woman director Patty Jenkins described films released directly to streaming as looking like fake movies, consumed and forgotten, much like a social media feed. A vocal minority of filmmakers won't do much to change course, since the majority wouldn't want to spurn their potential employers, whether that's Netflix, Paramount, or another big player. Besides, the corporate executives won't really give a damn. To them, the viewing experience becomes secondary to streaming era KPIs like engagement and retention rates. It doesn't matter if people at home are looking away from the TV screen, as long as they don't close the streaming app. Your undivided attention is not a necessity. A different point of view could provide a less critical stance on Netflix's strategy, that this has been the case for years, even before streaming entered the picture. You only ought to look at the movies and TV series on broadcast television for examples of creators repeating plot points 3 to 4 times. The broadcast network, by and large, hopes to sell commercial space by using a TV series or movie as bait. Exposition is the bread and butter of this game. In case you were in the kitchen grabbing a snack, here's what happened. And if you're just out of range of the TV, folding your laundry, here's a recap. Broadcast shows are designed for distracted viewers, so plot reiteration is commonplace. Netflix and company are just reinventing the wheel. The distractions aren't cooking, laundry, or commercials. It's the smartphone in your hand. As much as we'd like the streamers to bear the brunt of responsibility for this new direction, we are also to blame. Our phone addiction fuels the creation of more mindless and frictionless entertainment, allowing movies and TV series that are partially engaging to outlast those that challenge us to be more present. A movie doesn't need to be exceptional, it just needs to prevent you from closing the app. And because of that, a bifurcation is already underway. Tier 1 is cinema. Theatrical releases championed by directors like Christopher Nolan that demand our complete attention, though the number of such releases will continue to decline. In some ways, it's hard to blame the decline when it costs an arm and a leg to take a family to the theater. Tier 2 is streaming content. Movies optimized for second screen viewing, rewarding the visually disconnected and orally engaged viewer. The latter tier will inevitably become more populated over time, and we may be staring at a vicious feedback loop. Audiences become worse at watching movies, so movies become simpler, which makes audiences even worse at watching movies. On and on and on. We might as well listen to an audiobook at that point. It sounds a lot like doomsaying, so I need to pause for a second and state that streaming isn't the devil incarnate. There's a sizable number of exceptional movies and TV series that I run into regularly, and it's cheaper and easier to watch these than ever before. My recent excursion into HBO Max led me to Mare of Easttown, Sharp Objects, and A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, along with a decent selection of films that were never shown in my country theatrically. To people like me in distant lands, streaming could be seen as a net win, and all the titles I mentioned prefer showing rather than telling. The concern is that these gems or treasures are going to be discovered much more irregularly going forward, and created infrequently. The norm, on the other hand, is said to be trash that treats us like we're blind. Then again, one man's trash is another man's treasure.